What's up, guys? Welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Riddell, and in today's video we continue our Bongcloud opening series by covering a game from the Trailblazer himself, Hikaru Nakamura, as he went up against Daniel Naroditsky in a 3+0 blitz game. Now, if you know anything about the Bongcloud, you know that Nakamura started this thing off with e4 followed by king e2. I mean, just throwing this king towards the center of the board. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that king e2 is a good move or even a good idea. I mean, really, the only reason you'd ever play this is for a troll opening type purpose. I mean, you're messing around with a friend, you're trying to play like Nakamura himself. Whatever your reason is, this move is absolutely terrible. But surprisingly, if we do follow Bongcloud opening strategy and try to keep the position closed and really try to limit the activity of our opponent's pieces, we're going to have a surprisingly playable middle game, at least not completely losing, even against top-tier competition like Daniel Naroditsky. Now here we see Naroditsky continue with knight f6, putting some pressure on our centralized pawn on e4, and now we see Hikaru respond against that with d3, really trying to hold on to the pawn on e4. And notice now black plays this move of d5. Now, if you yourself are playing the Bongcloud and you ever face a move like f5 or d5 trying to break the game open, you got to realize we are in a defensive stance. We're not trying to win this game in 10 or 15 moves. We literally have a king on e2, and because of this, we have to keep the position as closed as possible. That's why we see Nakamura continue with knight d2, simply holding on to the pawn on e4. But let's first take a look at what happens if we do capture off this pawn on d5. Really, by playing this, you're simply giving the black pieces more activity and range against your already big target on e2. In fact, right now, black could capture the pawn on d5, but they could also just continue with something like bishop c5, really reaching a reverse Scotch game type position, but obviously with our king on e2, in which case, look, black can take this centralized pawn back whenever they like, and if we try to hold on to the pawn, black could then just continue with c6, looking to capture back with c takes d5, and if we capture the pawn on c6, sure, we are up a pawn following knight takes c6, but guys, this position is absolutely lost for white. I mean, right now, black has ideas like bishop g4 or check, knight d4 options in the air, queen b6 even, right? I mean, just pouncing down on the b pawn as well as a battery ram against the pawn on f2. Black could even just play something like castling kingside, rook e8, and then break this file open with e4. I just don't see white holding on here very long. So y'all, if you ever do see a move like d5, do not capture back, but instead in the Bongcloud, we have to hold the fort. And we see Nakamura do this by playing knight d2. Whole idea being, look, I mean, if you want to take on e4, okay, I'll simply capture back. And now we actually see this idea of bishop c5, really trying to put some pressure on f2, which, by the way, is the weakest pawn in chess because only the king defends it. But Nakamura simply continues here with the idea of c3. And again, we are trying to limit the activity of our opponent's pieces. Many of you are probably wondering, okay, what on earth does this c3 move do? Well, notice if black ever plays knight c6, which was actually just played just a couple moves later, we are actually really compromising the activity of this knight, refusing knight d4 check ideas as well as knight b4. And on top of that, by playing c3, we're also eyeing b4 ideas from white, right? At any point, we can play b4 and kick this bishop around and gain some space on the queen side, at least gain some form of counterplay, which is much needed. And now black sees this and goes, okay, I'm going to play a5 and prevent b4 from being played in the near future, in which case now from Nakamura, we see queen c2 again. Notice, we're not trying to play crazy attacking chess, creating something in this position. We are simply playing very reserved, but also making it hard for black to find any kind of concrete plan to checkmate our king. We played this move e4 followed by king e2, but following that, we played d3 and knight d2, really supporting that pawn, and now this move of c3 followed by queen c2, yet again defending the pawn on e4 even more. We now see this move of knight c6 from Naroditsky, in which case we now see the purpose of c3 come to fruition as this knight d4 check idea is no longer available. And now from white, we see this move of knight gf3. Now, I personally prefer playing h3 followed by knight f3, and we've actually seen Nakamura do this move order in his own games, but here he mixes things up with knight gf3. And the reason I personally don't like playing this move first before h3 is because now black has this knight g4 idea. Now look, this was not played in the game, but now after this move of knight g4, white has to be very careful. In fact, right now we can't even defend the pawn on f2, at least right away. In fact, here the best response for white is e takes d5. Whole idea being if a move like queen takes d5, we can always play something like knight e4, defending the pawn on f2 and attacking the bishop on c5 at the same time. So really by taking this pawn on d5, we're opening up that central square. But now if a move like knight takes f2, attacking our rook, the best option for white is actually taking the knight on c6. Whole idea being if knight takes h1, yet again, we have this key idea of knight e4, attacking the bishop, but really trying to also put some pressure on f2. And the reason this matters is because we're simply down in material in the current position, and black would love to get this knight out on a square like g3 or f2, but by playing this move of knight e4, we're taking away the f2 file from that knight, and really the g3 square was already taken away. So now we're attacking this bishop. On top of that, we have knight takes e5 ideas in the air. We can always take on b7, followed by queen a4 with check. And really the most important idea here for white is this idea of bishop e3. Whenever we play this move, we are really going to be restricting this knight from moving to f2 in the near future. We're trying to win this knight on h1. Yes, we're currently down in material, but by playing knight e4 followed by a future bishop e3, this knight is simply not going to be able to get out, and we as white are hopefully going to capture this knight back and have a better game. And look, if you plug this position into a computer program, it's going to give you about a minus 0.28 advantage for black, so very minor. So no, we're not winning this position. But honestly, guys, when playing the Bongcloud, if you can reach an evaluation like that and just get an even game, you've already reached a major milestone. So again, y'all, following this move knight f3, we do not see black respond with knight g4, attacking on f2, which gives us e takes d5 followed by knight e4 options. But instead we see this move of castling kingside, in which case now we see the move of h3. Again, I personally like playing h3 before knight f3, but if you do like playing against knight g4, play knight f3 first by all means. Here black continues now with b6, and now from Nakamura g3, again playing very reserved in the Bongcloud, simply trying to get a solid fortress and playable position. And now a very sneaky move from black, and that is bishop a6. Creative option, really putting this bishop directly against the king on e2. And because of this, black now has d takes e4 options in the air, and we simply cannot capture back with our pawn on d3 because it's currently pinned to the king on e2. So here Nakamura goes, okay, I'm going to get the heck out of the way. I'm going to play king e1, stepping back to where I started. And now from black, we just see solid developmental chess. I mean, queen d7, rook d8, but notice in the meantime, we see Nakamura continuing with b3 followed by this move of a3. And if you're applying the Bongcloud, this is the exact type of position that you want to reach. Again, you're not going to win games quick, but you're really trying to get a position like this where you form a solid fortress and really support your pawn on e4 first with moves like d3, knight d2, queen c2, etc. And even moves like a3, b3, g3, and h3, just making it hard for black to come up with anything concrete against your king on e1. Here we see black capture on e4, trying to create something in this position, but now we see white just capture back as planned. And now this move of bishop takes f1. Now here white does have to be careful. I mean, if we take with the rook, black has queen takes h3, and now black is completely winning. And if a move like knight takes f1, black is able to play knight takes e4, putting a ton of pressure on f2. And really, if we take this knight on e4, we have queen d1 checkmate, game over. So all that being said, guys, we do not see a move like rook takes f1 or knight takes f1 from white here, but instead king takes f1. And notice now, by playing g3, this king g2 spot is going to be a very nice potential square for the king. In fact, if white ever did get this move in, I would probably walk by this position in an over-the-board tournament game and think that this game was completely normal, when in reality, white played king e2, king e1, king f1, and then tucked this king on the very nice square of king g2. But here black tries to create something. Black doesn't want to allow white to get a bunch of time in this game to play moves like king g2 and start getting this position together. Here instead, we see this idea of queen d3 check, simply attacking the king. Now obviously, if we don't want to just lose our queen on c2, we got to capture this queen off. And now after rook takes d3, this rook is currently attacking our pawn on c3 and knight on f3 as well. But here from Nakamura, we see this simple idea of b4, expanding on the queen side and attacking this bishop on c5, making it a much less active piece, and then simply hanging on to the pawn on c3, right? No hero chess here, nothing crazy here from Nakamura, just solid, good strategic chess. And actually right now, by playing these two moves, white is now threatening to play king e2, which simply traps the rook on d3, as it simply has nowhere to go. And if we do get in this king e2 move, black's going to have no choice but to simply give up their rook for the knight and go down the exchange. Now that being said, bishop d6 was a mistake for black, because obviously this rook can't run away to a square like d7 or d8. Black here could have played a move such as bishop e7, but even then, white has a very solid game ahead of them. King e2, attacking this rook, and even if a move like rook fd8, sure, black does have current control of that open file, but this knight on d2 is not going anywhere anytime soon, and we can now just start expanding on the queen side with b5 attacking that knight a4. We're then going to continue by playing a move like rook hd1 fighting for that d file, and it's actually white here that has the edge. However, y'all, we do not see a move such as bishop e7, which gives this rook the ability to run away or be defended by the rook on d8, but instead we see this move of knight takes e4. Now, at first sight, this move of knight takes e4 simply seems to be winning because following knight takes e4, this rook has captured on f3 and has gotten out of the supposedly seeming trap. But notice now we play this move of king e2, right? Attacking this rook. And now this rook only has one square. Naroditsky here drops this rook back to f5, and here Nakamura could have responded with a move like g4, which does take away the two current squares that this rook has, but then it also gives away the square of f4. Guys, every single time you guys move a pawn or piece in chess, you are gaining something, but you're also giving something away. Sure, this rook can only move to h5 and f5 at the current moment. g4 simply seems to win a rook. We do gain something there, but we also just give up that square on f4. So here we see white in no rush, just continuing with rook a d1, putting some pressure on that bishop on d6, and following a takes b4, okay, we'll simply capture back. And now after rook d8, we always got to ask ourselves the question, if we face a position like this, and one of our opponent's pieces is very awkwardly placed, like this rook on f5, I mean, guys, if we were sitting across the table and I handed you a black rook and said, hey, drop it anywhere you want, you probably wouldn't have picked the square of f5, right? I mean, this rook can barely even move, and we would love to play this move g4, but this rook f4 move simply shows that we're only helping out black there. So how do we take away the square of f4? Well, when you ask it that way, let's just drop this bishop back to the first rank, right? Taking away the square of f4, and then look to play g4, which is actually what we see the very next move. Now this rook on f5 is trapped. Black tried to play this move of rook a2, but now following rook d2, Naroditsky simply resigned the game against the Bongcloud opening played by Nakamura. Whole idea being, I mean, if black wants to play something like rook f4, okay, we're going to take this bishop on d6, and we're going up a ton of material, no matter how you chop that position up. And here, if a move like rook takes d2, we simply take back with the bishop, and yet again, this rook is simply trapped. Black could try to play something such as rook f4, right? I mean, that way we could get some kind of material back for the rook, but in that case, let's just capture off this bishop on d6. Let's take that rook off the board, and now just play a move like rook d1. I don't care who you are, you're not going to be surviving this position as black against someone like Nakamura. Thanks for watching, and thank you especially to all of you engaging on Patreon. Your donations are helping the Chess Giant team to continue developing more and better chess content. If you want to learn more about the extras you can unlock by subscribing at one of our Patreon tiers, hit up the link in the description if interested. Thanks for watching today's video. If you'd like to learn more on the theory behind the Bongcloud opening, click that video to the left. If you'd like to learn more about the fried fox defense with f6 and king f7 from black, click that video to the right. Leave a comment down below to let me know what other videos you'd like to see covered on this channel. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.